The evening wind carried a light scent of jasmine as Maya and her husband, Omar, walked up the broad stone steps of her aunt's house. The home looked grand in the warm light's tall windows, shining floors, and a gate that opened like a small hotel entrance. Cars lined the street, and the sound of laughter floated out from the courtyard. Maya wore a soft, simple dress the color of tea with milk. Her hair was tied neatly, and she carried a small gift wrapped in brown paper with a white ribbon. Omar walked beside her with an easy smile and a calm step, holding the door open as they entered. Inside, the living room was bright and crowded. Music played at a gentle volume. A table in the corner displayed cakes, sweets, and shiny dishes. People moved in cheerful clusters, showing each other photos and new watches. A cousin in a bright suit waved at them and then glanced down at Maya's shoes as if they were an interesting puzzle. A second cousin lifted eyebrows when she noticed the brown paper gift. Maya smiled and said hello to everyone, as she always did, and placed the gift on the table with care. She had written a note inside wishing the family health, peace, and unity. Her aunt hurried over with a busy smile and a tray balanced on one hand. "You came. Good, good," she said, eyes flicking over Maya's dress and Omar's plain jacket. "We are short of seats in the main room, so please take a place at the side table near the kitchen for now." She pointed across the room where extra chairs were lined up. The tone sounded like an instruction, not an invitation. Maya nodded gently. "Of course, Auntie," she said. She did not explain that standing or a side chair did not bother her. She came to be with family, not to make a scene. A young waiter passed by with a heavy tray, and the tray tilted as someone brushed his shoulder. Maya instinctively reached out, steadying the plates before they could slide. "Thank you, madam," the waiter whispered, cheeks red with worry. He looked very young, perhaps in his first job, and he moved as if the floor might shift under his feet. "You are doing fine," Maya said. "Breathe slowly. Step by step. You will do well tonight." The waiter's mouth lifted into a shy smile before he hurried away again. Near the main sofa, a group of cousins compared cars and spoke about a new restaurant. One pointed discreetly toward Omar's wrist. "Still the same watch," he joked. "Classic choice." The words sounded polite, but the smile behind them was not. Omar only nodded and smiled back. "It still tells time," he said. They laughed lightly, as if his answer proved something small about him. He offered no other words and moved away to bring 2 glasses of water for Maya and the elderly uncle resting near a window. There were small details that might be missed in a fast room. Maya saw them and quietly moved to help. A candle leaned close to a silk table runner. She shifted it to a safe spot. The cake sat beneath a warm spotlight. She rolled the dessert table a little to the left so the frosting would not soften too soon. A shy child stood near the stairs holding a bunch of balloons, unsure where to tie them. Maya bent down, asked his name, and showed him a hook at the edge of the curtain rod where the balloons would float gently above everyone's heads. She went back to the side table and sat without fuss, pouring water for the elderly uncle and asking if he needed a cushion for his back. Omar's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and stepped toward the corridor to speak quietly. "Yes, the board vote is tonight," he said in a calm voice. "Please confirm the foundation donation timing books first, then uniforms." He listened, thanked the person, and ended the call. His words were simple and soft, easy to ignore in a lively house. A cousin named Danish caught a few phrases and made a face as if he had tasted something unusual. He shrugged and returned to his conversation about a new gym membership and a weekend trip. Aunt's voice rose above the music. "Later," she announced, "we will have a small round where everyone shares a success from this year: work, travel, a major purchase, anything inspiring." The room answered with cheers and a few playful groans. Maya pressed her hands together and smiled. She liked hearing good news. She did not mind that her own news was small, like helping a neighbor's child with notebooks, or cooking for a mother with a newborn. Good news was still good news, even if it wore simple shoes. A cousin-in-law, Rian, strode in with the wide steps of someone pleased with himself. He greeted the room and made sure people heard him mention parking his new car. "It has a special start," he said, clicking a button on his key fob so the engine growled once outside. A cluster of relatives went to the window to look. "Omar," Rian called across the room with a grin, "when is your upgrade coming?" Omar smiled, not unkindly. "When the old one stops," he said. Laughter rippled again, friendly on the surface, sharp at the edges. Maya's eyes softened, and she looked down at her hands for a moment. Then she rose and fetched water for the aunt who had been speaking and for the kitchen helper who had been darting around with plates. The evening stretched in pleasant colors. The sun went down, leaving a gentle orange along the horizon. Fairy lights blinked in the courtyard as more guests arrived. The young waiter, the same one Maya had helped, slowed near her side table to refill glasses. "Thank you again," he murmured. "I get nervous. This is the biggest event I have served." Maya asked his name. "Sammy," he answered. She told him he was doing a good job and that real service was calm, not loud. His shoulders straightened. For a moment, the power flickered. The lights dimmed, and a few voices rose in worry. Omar took out his phone, walked to the venue manager at the entrance, and spoke quietly. The manager nodded and made a call. Within minutes, a technician from nearby arrived with a small toolkit, checked a loose connection, and set a fan near the dessert table to keep the cake safe. The manager thanked Omar. "Sir, we'll secure that line now," in a tone of respect that went almost unnoticed in the chatter. Omar simply said, "Please thank your team. They are working very hard," and returned to Maya. He placed a glass of water in her hand. "Are you comfortable?" he asked. She smiled. "I am okay." Near the big sofa, the conversations grew louder. A cousin showed photos from a beach trip on a wide phone screen. Another compared prices of a watch he had seen in a mall and the one he had bought online. Danish, hearing soft talk from the side table, leaned toward a friend and made a small joke about budget gifts, then hid the smile behind his hand. He did not see the way Maya's aunt's maid, an older woman with work-strong hands, paused and smiled at Maya as she passed, grateful for the lift on the heavy water can and the polite thank you that most people forgot to say. Maya watched the room and felt a mixture of emotions. The house still reminded her of childhood long curtains, the smell of cardamom, the old photos on the wall. It also felt different now, louder, busier, full of comparisons that sat like heavy ornaments. She took a slow breath and decided that her place this evening would be to keep small things steady: a chair moved for an elder, a water refill for a guest, a ribbon fixed on a gift box that kept sliding open. She touched Omar's sleeve lightly. "Thank you for the water," she said. He understood her look, the kind that needed no extra words. Time moved forward. A group near the music player argued cheerfully over songs. Rian returned from the window, pleased that his car had become part of the evening talk. Later, he said to the room, "Let us add a fun game: highest earnings this quarter, biggest purchase, and best travel photo. We will clap for the winner." The group laughed and agreed. "Fun," someone said. "Yes, inspiring," said another. Maya did not win CE. She only turned a little to face the elderly uncle, whose hands trembled as he tried to cut a small piece of fruit. She took the plate, cut the fruit into neat slices, and set it before him. "You are very kind," he whispered. "You always have been." Sammy approached again, more confident now, and set a small bottle of chilled water on Maya's table without being asked. "From the manager," he said, eyes bright. "He said thank you for saving the cake from the hot light. And for helping just now." Maya blinked in quiet surprise. "Please tell him I only moved it a little," she replied. Sammy nodded and left with quick steps, almost cheerful. "There will be a microphone soon," Maya's aunt announced, stepping past Maya's chair as if she were a post on the porch. "Be ready, everyone." Tell us your successes. Keep it short. The aunt's gaze slid over Maya again, then to Omar, and then back to the shining main circle where chairs were set in a neat row. We will start with those at the front, she added. The side tables may come later if there is time. Her tone was still not unkind, just brisk in a way that sometimes forgot hearts. Omar leaned in. We can stand or sit anywhere you like, he said. I am comfortable here. He meant it. He did not care for shows. Maya nodded. The noise swelled. The music changed. The soft orange sky turned to a deep blue seen through the window. People moved to the main circle with a rustle of fabric and clink of bracelets. The first speaker held the microphone and began a story about a promotion. The room clapped. The second spoke of a new business deal. The room clapped louder. Maya folded her hands on her lap, feeling the smooth ribbon edge of the brown paper gift under her fingers. She thought of the small things that were big to her: the neighbor's child who had passed a test after evenings of quiet study at Maya's kitchen table, the widow down the lane whose medicine box she refilled each month, the garden where she grew extra herbs so she could share them on Fridays. She did not plan to speak of these things as if they were medals. If her turn came, she would simply talk about people and peace and the joy of doing a little good, one steady hour at a time. Before the next speech, the power flickered once more, then settled for good. The technician gave a quick thumbs up from the corridor. The manager nodded to Omar with gratitude that asked for no reply. Omar returned the nod and kept his eyes on Maya. He could see the small strain in her smile and the quiet way she held her seat at the side. He also saw something else, the strength in her patience, the way she made space for others without shrinking herself. It was a kind of grace that did not ring a bell when it entered a room. It just changed the temperature, slowly, gently, like evening air moving through jasmine vines. The speeches continued. The laughter rose. The game about earnings and purchases would come soon, people said, and they were excited. Someone in the front asked a helper to bring tea to only the main circle. Maya stood and went to the kitchen door to request 2 extra cups for the elders at the side. The cook, surprised by her soft voice and careful words, smiled and said, "Of course, madam." When Maya returned, her aunt was placing name cards on the front chairs for the success round. There were no cards for the side table. It was a small thing that felt large for a moment. Maya sat again, lifted her chin the slightest bit, and let the room blur to a softer picture. She would not force herself into the circle. She would not ask for another seat. She would do what she always did: hold her dignity, keep her kindness, and stand ready to help where help was needed. And while the house buzzed around her, she felt Omar's calm presence at her side, steady as a lighthouse. He looked at her, and in that look there was a promise, not a loud promise, not a show, only a quiet truth that the night would remember later. The room grew warmer as more guests arrived, and the chatter turned into a steady wave. Maya could feel the rhythm of the evening change from soft greetings to louder comparisons. She kept her seat near the side table, close to the kitchen door, where she could move if someone needed a hand. From here, she could see the long row of main chairs in the center of the room and the small stage with a microphone stand ready for the success round. A string of lights flashed slowly overhead, and the dessert table shone like a tiny festival. Every few minutes, a relative would glance her way, then look back to the main circle as if turning a page in a book that did not include her. Aunt swept past with a brisk step, carrying a list in one hand and a pen in the other. "We will keep to the schedule," she said to no one in particular, but loudly enough to be heard. "First the main circle, then, if time allows, others." Her eyes brushed over Maya and moved on. Maya did not take it to heart. She folded her hands and smiled at the elderly uncle next to her. "Are you comfortable?" she asked. He nodded, and she adjusted his shawl to warm his shoulders as a light breeze wandered in from the door. Rian strode across the room with the ease of a person who expects a path to open before him. He stopped near Maya's table, gave a bright smile, and tapped the side of the chair with his finger. "You two must come forward," he said in a cheerful voice that was also an instruction. "The game will be more fun with a full house." He turned slightly to the group around the sofa and added, "We will clap for the highest earnings and the biggest purchase. The rest can cheer." A few laughed and gave small claps in advance, warming up for the show. Danish leaned in from behind Rian and looked at the brown paper gift on the side table. "Whose is this?" he asked, picking it up. "Very classic." His smile was thin and careful. Maya reached out gently and took it back with both hands, as if it were fragile. "It is for the family," she said. "A small thing." Danish nodded, then murmured to a friend, "Minimalist fashion," and the friend hid a smile behind a cup of tea. Omar's expression did not change. He thanked the server who brought the tea and moved one cup to the elderly uncle's side. "Please drink slowly," Omar told him with kindness that did not need to raise its voice. The young waiter, Sammy, passed by again with a tray of glasses. His steps were steadier now. He saw Maya's eyes and gave a grateful nod. "The manager said to keep the fans running for the cake," he whispered quickly. "And, thank you again for helping me earlier." Maya nodded back. "You are doing well," she said. "Take your time." Sammy took a breath, lifted his chin, and continued through the crowd with more confidence than before. Near the window, a cousin with a glossy watch told a story about a dinner at a high restaurant, laughing loudly at the number on the final bill as if it were part of the flavor. Another cousin scrolled through photos of a trip and stopped to enlarge the image of a hotel lobby. The group leaned in to admire the pattern of the floor and the size of the chandelier. In the midst of this, Aunt clapped her hands. "Everyone, please settle," she said. "We will begin. 1 minute each. Share your highlight of the year, a promotion, a purchase, a special trip. Keep it inspiring." Chairs scraped lightly across the floor as people claimed seats in the front row. Rian gestured toward the main circle, and Danish pointed to 2 empty chairs at the far end. "Come, sit here," Danish said to Maya and Omar, his voice friendly but his eyes measuring. Omar smiled and shook his head. "Thank you. We will be fine here," he answered. "Please go ahead." He remained standing for a moment to help the elderly uncle shift his seat for a better view, then sat down next to Maya. The little decision puzzled a few cousins, who exchanged looks. One lifted a shoulder, as if to say, "They prefer the back," and turned away. The first speaker took the microphone and spoke about a new position at work. The room clapped. The second talked about a profitable deal completed last month. The room clapped louder. The third shared a video of a holiday at the beach, and people laughed at a playful moment with a flying kite. Claps again. The fourth mentioned a new home appliance that changed mornings, and even this drew cheerful approval. Maya clapped for each as if applause were a gentle blanket, not a loud measure of worth. When Danish's turn came, he cleared his throat and listed percentages and bonuses like a string of numbers on a shop window. Someone whistled. He bowed playfully and handed the microphone to Rian, who stepped forward with a broad grin. "I do not need the full minute," he said. "Just a sound." He pressed his car key, and the growl from outside drifted into the room like a trained animal. Laughter and cheers. "Thank you," he said with a laugh as if accepting a small award. "Also, a short trip to the coast. Great food. Great view." He showed 3 photos in 30 seconds and returned the microphone to the host. Aunt scanned her list. "If anyone from the side tables wants to share, we have 2 minutes before the cake," she said, glancing in Maya's direction with a look that offered a space but not an invitation. Before Maya could decide, Rian stepped closer and extended the microphone toward her with a smile that was charming and a touch too sharp. "Please," he said politely. "Say a few words." Maya rose slowly, holding the microphone like a fragile cup. She looked at the front row and then at the staff along the wall. "My highlight of the year," she said in a clear, calm voice, is small but important to me. A neighbor's child had trouble with school fees. Many tried to help. We found a simple plan: shared notebooks, evening lessons at my kitchen table, and a small jar to save coins. He passed his exam last week. He smiled as if someone had opened a window. That is my highlight. She dipped her head and handed the microphone back. There was a brief pause in the room, the kind of soft silence that can turn either way. A few elders clapped. Several cousins smiled politely, unsure. A small cluster near the sofa looked down at their phones as if the signal had weakened. Rian's smile did not quite reach his eyes. Very kind, he said in a tone meant to end the moment. Good deeds are good. Now, for the game. He turned to the front row with energy. Highest earnings, biggest purchase, best travel photo. The room brightened again, ready for the competition. Numbers would bring everyone back to the same page. Omar sat quietly through the buzz. He did not lift his hand for the microphone. He had no interest in showing figures as if they were flags on a hillside. Instead, he leaned toward Maya and asked softly, "Water?" She shook her head with a small smile. The elderly uncle raised a finger and whispered, "Tea." Omar signaled a staff member, but Maya was already rising to fetch it herself. "Please let me," she told Omar gently. "I am closer to the kitchen." In the kitchen corridor, the air smelled of cardamom, baked bread, and heat from the stove. Two cooks moved quickly, and a helper counted plates under his breath. 86, 87, 80. He frowned and started again. Sammy stood beside the counter rolling a cart forward. "2 teas, please," Maya requested kindly. "For the elders at the side table." The cook nodded and poured, his hands steady even in the rush. "Thank you," Maya said, and placed the cups on a tray. As she turned to go, a small accident broke the rhythm of the kitchen. A box of forks slipped from a shelf and clattered across the floor in a burst of sound. One of the cooks stepped back in surprise, bumped into a tray of salad bowls, and caught it just in time. Maya set the tea down and, without a word, crouched to gather the forks. Sammy knelt to help her. "I am sorry," he said quickly, though it was not his fault. "It is all right," Maya replied, smiling. "We are many hands. We can fix small storms." When she returned to the room, the game had begun. People called out numbers with laughter and mock groans. This quarter. Year to date. Only new purchases count. The rules changed in the air as the group warmed to the sport. Rian stood at the front, adding light commentary like a host at a street show. A cousin raised a hand and claimed a high figure for a sale last month. Another waved a phone and displayed a pair of shoes. The room clapped and teased and added little jokes as if they were salt. Aunt floated toward Maya's side table to collect the elderly uncle's name for the list. She took the tea that Maya offered without noticing who had brought it. "Thank you," she said absently, then turned to the front again. On her way, she paused at the dessert table and lifted the lid of a silver platter. The cake shimmered under the fan's gentle air, safe and firm. Her eyes softened for a moment, then she closed the lid and returned to her list. Danish moved closer to Maya again, curiosity bright in his face. "You have not spoken about any purchases," he said. "Nothing new this year? Phone? Watch?" His tone carried the soft pressure of someone who thinks he is helping. "I replaced our rice pot," Maya answered with a small smile. The handle had become loose. Danish blinked, uncertain whether to laugh. "Useful," he said finally, then added, "You know, there are workshops on personal presentation. Very empowering. They help with style. I could connect you." He meant well, perhaps, but the words landed like small stones. Maya kept her smile. "Thank you," she replied. "You are very thoughtful." Across the room, Omar spoke softly with the venue manager, who had approached with a respectful bow of the head. Their conversation was short. The manager nodded several times and then hurried away toward the reception desk. He returned a moment later with a small folder, which Omar did not open. Instead, Omar asked the manager to hold it for later. After the cake, he said quietly. At the right time. The manager understood and slipped the folder into a drawer near the entrance. The television in the corner, set to a quiet news channel, showed a rolling headline about a community library program in a nearby district. Maya glanced at it as she passed and smiled. She had once carried a box of books to that library with two neighbors on a bright morning. She did not know that the camera had caught a brief image of her then. The frame now was of a teacher reading to children. The sound was off, and the room did not notice. The game at the front grew louder. Numbers rang like coins dropped on a table. Someone fumbled with a phone to show a travel picture, and the image flipped the wrong way, drawing laughter and good-natured teasing. Rian raised his hand for quiet and declared a winner for best purchase, then best travel photo. He looked around. Highest earnings, he called. Anyone beat this? He wrote a number on the back of his hand with a pen and held it up to cheers. Strong quarter, he said with a grin. Maya stood a little, stretched her fingers, and checked the elderly uncle's cup. Still warm. She sat back down. She could sense a small change in the kitchen corridor behind her, a pause in the usual rhythm. The helper who had been counting plates stepped to the door, caught Sammy's eye, and held up both hands with all fingers spread, then two more. Sammy nodded, lips pressed together in a line. From that distance, Maya understood, they might be short on plates or servings. The feeling of a small storm rose again at the edges of the room, quiet and urgent. Omar noticed it too. He looked at Maya, and she looked back. No words were needed. He rose and walked toward the corridor with a calm step, as if he were only stretching his legs. Maya followed after a moment, carrying the tray with the empty cups so her motion looked natural. The music rolled on, and the voices stayed bright. The room did not yet see the small problem forming in the doorway between celebration and service. Inside the corridor, the cook's face was steady but thoughtful. We counted wrong, he said softly to Sammy and Maya, respectful but worried. A few more guests arrived late, and 2 trays are still on the road. We may be short for the next round. Maya nodded once, as if he had told her the weather. We will manage, she said gently. We can split portions without anyone feeling less welcome. Add a light salad to each plate. Serve elders first. Keep water moving. And please breathe. Sammy took a breath, and the cook's shoulders lowered a little. Omar stepped in without drawing attention. He spoke to the manager in a voice just loud enough to be heard over the fan. Call your supplier 2 streets away, he suggested. Ask for 4 extra trays, 2 salad, 2 bread. I will settle it. The manager nodded and made the call. 10 minutes, he whispered. They are on their way. Omar thanked him and returned to the doorway, where the music and cheers carried on as if nothing had shifted. Maya glanced back at the room. Rian was lifting the microphone again, promising a surprise after the cake, as if surprises were decorations. The guests laughed and clapped, ready for more. At the side table, the elderly uncle smiled at Maya, not because of any speech or number, but because he had seen her move through the room like a quiet wind that steadied the branches. She smiled back and lifted a hand in a small wave. Aunt announced, 10 minutes to cake, and the room answered with short cheers. In the kitchen corridor, the extra trays were already turning the corner, carried by 2 delivery workers who walked fast without running. The manager opened the door and guided them in. Maya thanked them, then turned to Sammy. We will plate quickly and calmly, she said. No rush in the hands. Steady. Sammy nodded, and the small knot in his stomach released. Just before Maya stepped back into the main room, a slight hush moved through the air, not from the guests but from the staff along the wall. The manager had opened the drawer and taken out the small folder, the one he had kept for later. He glanced at Omar, who gave the smallest nod. After the cake, the manager mouthed. Omar agreed. The folder closed with a gentle click, and the manager placed it on a side table near the stage, hidden among flower cards and spare napkins. Maya returned to her seat as if she had only gone for a walk. No one asked where she had been. The guests leaned forward, ready for sweet plates and more clapping. The lights steadied, the fans hummed, and the cake gleamed under a safe breeze. In the space between one song and the next, Maya felt the whole evening gather itself, like a breath taken just before speaking. She placed her hand on the edge of the table and waited, calm and steady, as the night prepared to show what quiet hearts do when noisy moments come. The cake started its slow journey from the kitchen like a small parade. Two helpers carried it with careful hands while Sammy walked ahead, asking people to make a path. The room changed tone. Loud talk softened. Phones turned to cameras. Children rose on their toes. The cake looked bright under the fan's gentle air, safe now from the heat. Aunt guided the helpers toward the small stage, smiling at the guests in the front row. Maya stood halfway between the kitchen door and the side table, ready to move if anything slipped. Omar stood near the aisle to let elders pass first. The music lowered to a soft tune, like a heartbeat under the chatter. A thin problem appeared at once: the lighter for the candles did not work. The helper flicked and flicked, only a weak spark showed. People near the front began to murmur. Sammy's eyes darted to Maya without thinking, as if she were a steady point on a map. Maya stepped to the dessert table, took a small tea light that had been used earlier, and held it near the stubborn candle wick while the helper cupped his hand against the draft. The candle caught, then shared its flame to the others one by one. A few guests clapped lightly, surprised that such a small fix could calm a room. Aunt touched Maya's arm with a brief nod and then turned the smile back to the crowd. Cake in 3, 2, 1. Rian called, enjoying the sound of his own timing. The room sang a short blessing for the elders. The elderly uncle, steadied by Omar's hand, cut the first slice with a proud, careful motion. Everyone clapped. Plates began to move like ships in a harbor, slow at first, then in smooth lines. The extra trays arrived from the supplier just as the first row finished serving, and the kitchen sent out fresh salad and bread to keep portions even. The small storm that had gathered at the edge of the evening broke into a soft, kind rain of good service. No one at the front knew why it felt so smooth, they only felt comfortable, and comfort makes people generous. As plates spread through the room, another test arrived. A child bumped the dessert table and a row of small cups wobbled. Maya slid her hand under the first cup just before it tipped, and Omar steadied the table leg with his foot. The cups settled. The child froze, wide-eyed. "It's okay," Maya said gently. "You are safe." She checked the tablecloth, adjusted the edge, and smiled at the child's mother so she would not worry. The mother mouthed thank you. The boy stuck close to his mother's side and watched Maya with new respect, as children do when they see quiet skill. Rian took the microphone again, full of energy. "A small surprise," he announced. "After cake, we will show the best car in the driveway. The owner can give 1 tip for success. Short and sweet." He winked at the front row. Laughter rose. People liked shows. Rian held up his key fob like a tiny trophy. He pressed a button to make the car lights flash outside as a teaser. Instead, the alarm burst into a loud, sharp sound that cut through the music like a whistle at a factory. Everyone flinched. The sound repeated, bright and embarrassing. Rian pressed again. It grew louder. A few cousins laughed to be kind, but the sound was not kind. "Press twice and hold," Maya said softly as she passed him, not taking the microphone, not taking the key, just offering a short instruction the way one might tell a friend where to find the light switch in a dark hall. Rian did as she said. The alarm stopped at once. Relief washed over the room like a curtain falling. "Thank you," he said, trying to smile as if the whole moment had been planned. His ears were a little pink. The crowd returned to cake and talk. The music rose back to its gentle line. The elderly uncle began to cough. It was a deep cough with a tight edge. Omar was already moving before the second cough. He reached the uncle, helped him sit a little forward, and offered water in small sips. "Breathe slow," Omar said. "In through the nose, out through the mouth." The room quieted nearest to them. Maya placed a folded napkin in the uncle's hand and rubbed his back in a steady circle. Within a minute, the cough loosened and passed. The uncle closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Beta." He patted Omar's hand. Several people who had been staring looked away, thoughtful. They had seen the kind of care that does not ask to be seen. Sammy, who had been watching from the wall, turned to the venue manager and said in a whisper that held pride, "They are the kind ones." The manager nodded, not surprised. "Yes," he replied. "They are." He glanced at the small folder resting near the stage, checked that it was still hidden among the flower cards, and then looked to Omar. Omar's calm expression told him, "Not yet. After the cake. At the right time." Aunt asked the elders to bless the family. Hands rose in a gentle gesture, a few voices said a simple prayer for health and unity. The room relaxed. The worst of the evening's restlessness was gone. The cake tasted like memory. The salad tasted like fresh plans. People leaned back in their chairs with the easy air that follows small crises well managed. On the television, a quiet news banner showed a headline about scholarships in a nearby district. No one heard it, but the words were in the room like seeds in a pocket. Then, the house tried one more test. A thin line of water began to bead under a cooling pipe near the dessert table and travel down to the corner of the tablecloth where it might drip onto the cake. Maya saw it first. She took a folded napkin, set it under the drip, and shifted the cake stand an inch to the left. "Sammy," she said softly, "could you bring one more napkin?" He moved fast, placed the napkin where she pointed, and checked the pipe with the manager, who adjusted the valve and dried the line. The drip stopped. No one outside the small circle noticed, but the staff noticed. Their shoulders lowered again. A problem had arrived and been handled even before it had a name. Rian, recovering his charm, called for attention. "Now," he said, "the car in the driveway with the most votes, just for fun." He laughed and added, "No prizes, only pride." People laughed. They liked games that cost nothing and gave them a reason to wave. Several guests held up their hands for the same car. It was Rian's, of course, because he had filled the evening with its story. Danish cheered like a boy at a match and looked over at Maya as if to ask whether she was impressed yet. She clapped politely. It was a nice car. It was also only a car. She did not dislike it, she simply did not place her heart in things that could not love her back. Aunt lifted the microphone to thank the staff. It was a short courtesy line she used at the end of most events, but tonight, before she could speak, the venue manager stepped forward with respectful confidence. "If you allow, madam," he said, "I want to thank two guests who helped us behind the scenes. They asked for no mention. But we wish to say we saw their kindness." He did not point. He did not say names. He only bowed toward the side of the room where Maya and Omar sat. Several faces turned. A few people frowned, trying to remember a moment they had missed. Aunt hesitated, then nodded and smiled, unsure but curious. The manager continued, still careful. "When we had a small shortage, extra trays were arranged. When the lights flickered, a technician came. When our young staff felt nervous, kind words gave them strength. We are grateful." He stepped back at once and handed the microphone to Aunt as if returning a tray. The room clapped in a new way, softer, a little unsure, not for a number or a brand but for something they could not measure. Rian tried to steer the attention back to his game. "Wonderful," he said. "Now, one last round of highlights before the closing. He looked around the front row, hunting for a grand note to end on. A cousin shared a short tale about a successful week. Another showed a photo of a watch against a city view. The applause sounded normal again, but the room did not fully return to the earlier heat. Some guests now watched the side of the room as if a window had opened there and a breeze might come in. Omar stayed quiet. He did not search for eyes. He did not adjust his jacket to look more important. He asked the elderly uncle if he needed anything. He checked that Maya had a glass of water. He listened to the laughter and the clapping as if they were ocean sounds in a shell present, harmless, somehow very far. When he met the manager's gaze, the manager gave the small signal. The folder was ready on the side table near the stage. Everything inside it was in order. Omar's mouth curved in a thank you that used no breath. Maya rested for a minute, then rose to take the tray of empty cups to the kitchen. As she passed the staff line, the older maid with work-strong hands paused and touched her elbow in a simple gesture that said more than a speech. It said, "I saw you." It said, "We feel safe when you are near." Maya's eyes warmed. She pressed her hands together for a second, then carried the tray down the corridor with light steps. At the kitchen door, Sammy waited with a clean cloth and a fresh tray, prepared before she asked. "For the elders," he said, proud to predict her next need. "Thank you," Maya replied. "You are learning fast." He grinned and stood taller. The evening reached a quiet turning point that most people did not notice. The show of numbers had burned its bright flame and now glowed low like a coal. Warm. Not shouting. Ant glanced once at Maya, then at Omar, then at the manager, reading expressions with the practiced eye of a host trying to keep control of a river that did not always obey the banks. She walked to the side table near the stage and moved a flower card aside to check a list for the closing. Her fingers touched the folder without meaning to. She paused, then withdrew her hand. The manager stepped close and spoke in a respectful whisper. "Madam, after your thanks, there is a small announcement from a donor," he said. "It is for the family, in honor of the elders." Ant frowned softly. "Which donor?" she asked. The manager did not drop names. "A friend," he said. They asked to keep the focus on the purpose. Ant looked from the manager to Omar, who stood a few steps back with his calm ocean look. He did not signal anything. He simply waited. Something in his quiet made the decision easier. Ant nodded. "Very well," she said. "After my thanks." The music dipped again. Ant took the microphone for the closing words. She thanked the guests, the elders, and the staff. She praised the spirit of family and wished good health for all. Her voice was firm, the way a hostess's voice is when she knows the night must end well even if it did not always behave. She glanced once more toward the side table and then said, "Before we finish, the venue has a short note to share. It concerns a gift made in the elders' honor." The room shifted. People leaned in. Surprise flew like a quiet bird from chair to chair. Gifts from the venue were not common. Rian lowered his phone. Danish stopped a half-formed joke. Sammy, at the wall, pressed his hands together, hope in his face. The manager came forward with the folder and stood to one side, waiting for the nod. Omar looked at Maya. She felt his glance and answered with a small smile that carried years of understanding, "Yes, if now is the right time, let it be now. Not to win. Not to shame. Only to teach, and to brighten, and to lift." The manager opened the folder. The papers inside lay in neat order like clear steps on a path. The room took a quiet breath as if standing at the top of a small hill before the view. The night was ready to hear something new. The manager lifted the microphone with both hands, as if it were something that should be carried with care. His voice was calm and steady. "On behalf of our team," he said, "I want to share a small announcement made in honor of the elders of this family." People leaned forward. The room was quiet in a new way, the kind of quiet that comes when hearts are ready to listen. He opened the folder. Inside were simple papers with neat lines and clear words. First, he said, our training program for young staff will receive support for 1 full year. This will help them study hospitality, safety, and service. Many of our workers are students who pay fees at night. This support will cover books, uniforms, and exam costs. He paused and looked toward the staff line. Sammy pressed his lips together to stop them from trembling, then smiled a bright, surprised smile he could not hide. A soft sigh moved through the room as if the house itself had taken a deep breath. Second, the manager continued, 2 scholarships will go to family members who applied to study but could not complete their fees. One is for Aisha, who wants to study nursing. The other is for Bilal, who wants to study computer repair. Their names were suggested quietly by elders who know their struggle. Aisha, sitting near the back with her mother, covered her mouth with her hands. Tears stood in her eyes. Bilal's father touched his shoulder with pride he had kept hidden for months. People turned to look at the 2 students, and the feel of the room changed again, less show, more heart. Third, the manager said, tonight's event costs are settled. The cooks, the helpers, the cleaners, and the musicians will receive a bonus in the elders' honor. A small murmur rose and fell. Aunt, who had carried lists all evening, looked at the manager and then at the folder. Who is the donor? She asked aloud, not sharply, but with the honest question of a host who wants to say a correct thank you. The manager held the microphone close. The donor asked to keep attention on the purpose, not on a name, he said. He turned slightly and bowed toward the side of the room where Maya and Omar sat, but I will ask their permission now to share who guided us. He lifted his eyes to Omar. The room followed his gaze like iron follows a magnet. Omar stood with quiet ease, not in a rush, not slow. Please, he said, his voice soft but clear, speak about the purpose. Names matter less than people. His eyes moved to Maya for a moment, and in that look was a world. The manager inclined his head. Even so, he said, we must give thanks. His words were gentle. The support comes from the Nyadastic Foundation, a small group that believes in first chances and second chances. They give in the name of kindness they once received. Some guests blinked, they had heard that name on a news scroll or at a school gate but never tied it to a face. Rian frowned, trying to pull a memory forward. Danish stared at Omar and then at Maya, as if something inside him had just turned a clear page. Omar did not walk to the center. He did not raise his hands. He took only one step forward and spoke in a voice that was easy to hear because it did not try to be large. Many years ago, he said, my mother fell ill. I was young. I did not know what to do. One neighbor she did not have much brought food to our door without leaving her name. She did this again and again for weeks. My mother would cry sometimes while eating, not from sadness, but because she tasted love in the rice. That kind of help is quiet. It does not ask for a stage. It only asks for a chance to continue. A rustle moved through the chairs. People looked at Maya without meaning to. Her cheeks warmed, but she kept her eyes on Omar. I grew older, Omar said. Work came. Blessings came. I learned that money can be loud, but help can be soft and still be strong. He looked toward the staff line. Our young friend Sammy did brave work tonight. He kept his hands steady. He learned while serving. He deserves training and respect, like any student. Sammy's eyes filled. He stood a little straighter, as if a light had been placed behind his shoulder blades. Omar turned to Aunt and the elders. This is your house. These are your people. Tonight is your honor. The foundation wished to give in your names because families teach us who we are. We gave quietly because the lesson is not look at us. The lesson is look at what we can do together when we stop measuring each other by things that cannot love us back. No one clapped. Not because they did not want to. They were holding the moment in their hands, afraid that clapping would make it fall and break. Anne stepped forward holding her list like a small shield she no longer needed. She began, then stopped. She looked at Maya, really looked, as if for the first time that night she was seeing not a simple dress but the person wearing it. Anne's mouth softened. "Thank you," she said to Omar and to Maya both. "Thank you for honoring the elders and the young." Rian cleared his throat. He had been the loudest voice all evening. Now his voice sounded like a man walking on soft grass after running on stone. "Mr. Omar," he said, unsure whether to add a title, "is the foundation yours?" Omar smiled a little. "A group of friends leads it," he said. "We build it together." Rian nodded, then tried to correct his posture, as if standing better might help him feel better. Danish stepped forward, pulling courage up from a deep place. "And you arranged the technician, the extra trays, the fans." Omar's eyes were kind. "The team here did the work," he said. "We only made a few calls. I try to thank people who serve. They make nights like this possible." Danish swallowed. He looked down at his hands, remembered the jokes he had made earlier, and felt a heat he knew was not from the lights. Ant gave the microphone back to the manager. "Please, read the rest," she said. The manager turned a page. "There is one more note," he said. "Next month, a community day will be held at the local center. Anyone from this family who wishes to help may join. We will cook, serve, and provide school kits. There will be no cameras, no social media, no speeches. Only service. This invitation is from the foundation, in Maya's name." The last three words moved through the room like a soft bell. "In Maya's name." A few people turned fully to face her. Maya did not stand. She did not hide. She looked at the elders first, then at the staff, and offered a small, respectful nod. A slow clap began at the back from the older maid with work-strong hands. It was not the fast, noisy clapping of a game. It was the steady clapping of thanks. Others joined, one by one, until the sound filled the room like rain on a wide roof. Maya looked down, then up again, steady. When the clapping softened, Omar spoke once more. "Please forgive any discomfort," he said. "No one is being judged. We all love in different ways. Some people show love by buying a car their child has dreamed about. Some show love by sitting with a neighbor's son and reading a lesson. Both are gifts when they come from a clean heart." His words were not a scold. They were a bridge. Rian stepped forward without being asked. He looked at Maya. For a moment, he could not find where to place his hands. "I am sorry," he said plainly. "I was loud tonight. I made the night about winning small games. I forgot the bigger game." His grin, which earlier had been a shield, lowered into a true smile. "If you will have me," he added softly, "I would like to come to the community day and carry boxes, or wash dishes, or do whatever is needed." Maya's face brightened. "We will be glad to work with you," she said. "Thank you for your kind heart." Danish stood with his head a little bowed. "I spoke foolishly," he said to Maya. "About gifts. About seats." He glanced at the elderly uncle and then at the staff. "I forgot that respect is a seat you bring with you. I am sorry." Maya answered with the same quiet grace she had shown all evening. "We all forget things," she said. "Tonight we remembered together." Aunt walked to Maya and took her hands. "You saved my cake twice," she said, almost laughing through her tears. "You kept the children calm. You cared for your uncle. You kept the house steady. And I did not give you a chair at my front." Her voice broke. "Forgive me, child." Maya hugged her gently. "We are family," she said. "We keep each other steady. That is all." The manager returned the microphone to its stand and signaled to the musicians. A soft tune began, not the proud march from earlier but a warm melody that made people speak in lower voices. The staff relaxed, shoulders dropped, smiles came easy. The room did not become dull. It became deep. Even the lights seemed to be listening. Sammy approached with a small envelope and spoke to Maya and Omar together. "Madam, sir," he said, "careful and brave, I want to study. I want to learn to manage a team one day and treat people like you treated me tonight. I will not waste this chance." Omar shook his hand. "You already began," he said. "You served with heart." Maya added, "When you lead, remember how it felt to be nervous tonight. Leaders who remember that will always be kind." Sammy nodded as if he were signing a promise. At the edge of the room, Aisha and Bilal came to thank the elders and the foundation. Aisha, still wiping tears, said she would work hard in her nursing program and return to serve at the community clinic on weekends. Bilal said he would repair computers for students at low cost, so no one would miss a class because of a broken screen. Their parents stood behind them, faces shining with quiet pride. Several cousins, moved by their words, offered to help with books or to tutor on Sundays. The room, which had spent an hour measuring purchases, now measured plans and felt richer than before. Rian raised a hand. "One request," he said. "Can we change the last game?" People laughed softly. "No more highest earnings," he said with a grin. "Let us try best plan to help, one idea, one action, this month." The room cheered, not loud but warm. Ideas came quick. A cousin who loved reading offered to start a small story hour for children at the community center, another who ran a bakery promised to send bread every Friday, one with a van offered free rides to the clinic for elders on medicine days. The list grew like a garden. Through all this, Omar remained gentle and quiet, guiding the energy without holding it tight. He thanked the musicians for staying later than planned. He told the manager that the bonus was well deserved and asked him to share the elder's blessing with the whole team. He checked once more on the elderly uncle, who now looked brighter than he had at the start of the evening. "You taught them," the uncle whispered to Omar, "without raising your hand." Omar shook his head. "Maya taught us," he said. "I only opened a door." Aunt invited the elders to the front for one last photo, not for show, but for memory, and asked Maya to stand with them. This time, she did not forget to place 2 chairs at the center, one for the oldest elder, and one for Maya, whose simple heart had kept the night from sliding into noise. Maya hesitated, then, at Aunt's gentle insistence, she sat where she was guided. The older maid, standing near the kitchen door, dabbed her eyes with the edge of her dupatta and smiled. When the music faded, Omar took the microphone for a final word. "Thank you for your patience," he said. "Thank you for your love. We will see many of you at the community center next month. Please come in simple clothes and comfortable shoes. We will lift, wash, cook, read, and listen. We will make space for each other." He looked at Rian and Danish and added, "I will bring a tool kit. We may fix a few chairs, too." Laughter rippled in a kind way. He turned to Maya. "My home is simple because of her," he said, not as a performance but as a truth placed gently on the table. "She taught me that a good life is not heavy. It is steady." For a heartbeat, the room was water clear. People saw not money, not labels, not trophies, but a husband who admired his wife, and a wife who admired what was good in everyone else. The night did not end with fireworks. It ended with slow goodbyes, thoughtful hugs, and new plans. People carried plates back to the kitchen instead of leaving them on tables. Children picked up their own cups. Rian walked to the valet on quiet feet and cancelled a showy plan to rev his engine for the exit. Danish found Sammy and asked how to sign up for the training day to help the staff learn public speaking so they could greet guests with more confidence. Aunt tucked her list into her pocket and decided she would keep a few extra chairs near the front at every future gathering, chairs labeled not with names, but with a single word, welcome. When Maya and Omar stepped into the cool night, the jasmine in the garden breathed out its sweet scent again. The street was softer now. The stars were out. Omar opened the gate, and Maya paused for one last look back at the house where the evening had learned something. She held the small brown paper gift to her chest for a second, then placed it on the hallway table inside the door where Aunt would find it in the morning. Inside the box was a simple frame, a photo of the elders with a note that said, "Thank you for teaching us to be family." They walked to their car, the same older model that had carried them to the party without complaint, and got in. Omar started the engine. It made a steady sound, honest and sure. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," Maya said. As they drove away, the house behind them did not shrink. In a strange, quiet way, it grew wider, kinder, and, at last, big enough for everyone. The next month arrived with a bright morning and a soft breeze. The community center stood quiet at sunrise, its gate half open, its courtyard waiting. Maya reached early with a small bag of labels, markers, and tape. Omar carried a toolkit and a folded list. They greeted the watchman and stepped inside. The hall smelled of fresh soap and new paint. Someone had cleaned the floors at dawn. The tables along the wall held empty boxes for school kits, stacks of notebooks, pencils wrapped in clear plastic, and small bottles of glue. A large pot waited in the kitchen for rice and lentils. The notice board by the door said in neat letters, "Welcome. Please come in simple clothes. Please bring your kind heart." Sammy arrived next, wearing a plain shirt and a badge that read Trainee Supervisor. He looked proud and a little nervous. "Good morning," he said, standing taller than before. "I made a plan for the volunteers, if it is okay." He opened a notebook with color tabs. The plan was simple and strong: a welcome desk, a reading corner for children, a kitchen team, a kit packing table, a repair table, and a quiet area for elders. Maya read it and smiled. "This is good," she said. "Clear and calm." Omar shook Sammy's hand. "You are leading," he said. "Lead with care." A small van pulled up with boxes of rice, lentils, onions, and tomatoes. Rian climbed down from the passenger side wearing an old t-shirt and jeans. He carried 2 crates with both hands, his face open and bright without any show. "Where do you want these?" he asked. Maya pointed to the kitchen. "Thank you," she said. He nodded like a student and hurried inside. Danish arrived next with a backpack and a shy smile. He held a stack of blank sign-in sheets. "I brought forms," he said. "And tape. Lots of tape." Maya laughed softly. "Tape saves the day more than once," she replied. Aisha came in her nursing uniform and set up a small health booth near the door: blood pressure, guidance on clean water, a schedule for vaccine days. Bilal rolled in a cart with screwdrivers, spare keys, and a clean cloth. He hung a handwritten sign: "Free repair, school laptops and phones for study." He wiped the table twice, then once more, as if polishing his own hope. The older maid from Aunt's house walked in with a basket of fresh flatbread wrapped in cloth. "From the ladies of our lane," she said. "We need it early." Her hands were strong, her eyes were happy. By 9, the courtyard filled with volunteers and visitors. No cameras. No speeches. Only greetings, lists, and work. Maya placed a small note at the welcome desk: "If you feel lost, stand still for 3 breaths. Then ask. We will help you." She divided the pencils and notebooks into neat stacks and taught a teenage volunteer to count by tens. Omar checked the hinges on the hall door, oiled the squeaky one, tightened a loose bolt on a bench, and tested the kitchen tap that had dripped for weeks. The drip stopped. "That sound was my old friend," the cook joked. "I will miss it." Omar grinned. "We will introduce a quieter friend," he said, handing the cook a new washer as if it were a gift. A line formed at the kit packing table. Rian and Danish worked side by side without fuss. Rian opened boxes, Danish labeled them. Name, class, school, Danish called gently, and the children answered, their voices soft but clear. When a little boy spelled his name wrong from worry, Maya knelt and whispered the letters with him, tapping a rhythm on the table so he would remember. He smiled, then wrote it right and showed the paper to his mother like a medal. Small problems came and went, as they always do. A roll of tape stuck to itself, Danish unwound it slowly and saved most of it. A fan in the corner would not start, Omar changed the fuse and the blades began to turn. A plastic chair wobbled, Rian found a folded piece of cardboard and slid it under the short leg. It is not fancy, he said, but it will keep someone safe today. Maya nodded. Good fix, she said. Aunt arrived wearing a simple cotton dress and a soft smile. She carried 2 stacks of cards. One stack said welcome. The other stack said elders. She looked around the hall as if she were seeing a new house where every door opened easily. She found Maya at the kit table and took her hands. I brought extra chairs, Aunt said, almost shy. I learned my lesson. Maya squeezed her hands. Thank you for coming, she answered. They set the chairs in the shade and placed the welcome cards on them. People sat and felt seen. Aisha's health booth drew elders with careful steps. She checked blood pressure, wrote notes in small neat lines, and explained medicine timings in simple words. You can come to the clinic, she said. I will be there on Sundays. An old man laughed. You are the same little Aisha who used to run in our lane, he said. Now you tell me what to eat and what not to eat. Only so you will keep walking in our lane for many more years, Aisha replied, and he nodded, pleased. At Bilal's table, a student brought a laptop with a broken key. Bilal opened the case, showed the boy how the spring sat under the cap, and fixed it with slow, patient hands. Now you try, he said. He removed another key and let the boy place it back. The boy did it on the second try and looked up with wonder. You will fix many things, Bilal told him. Start with your own fear. Near noon, clouds gathered. A light rain began, tapping the tin roof and cooling the air. The volunteers moved with quick grace. Sammy led them to pull the book table 2 steps back from the open door. Maya sent 2 people to hold the outer tent poles while Omar tied extra rope. Rian brought in the last sack of rice and used a towel to wipe the floor near the entrance so no one would slip. Danish stood at the welcome desk and reminded each new visitor to walk slowly on the wet tiles. The rain smiled and then softened to a quiet mist. Work continued, steady and sure. In the kitchen, the big pot bubbled. The cook tasted the dal and nodded. Needs a small kindness, he said. Maya added a pinch of cumin she had roasted at home that morning. The smell rose in a warm wave. The cook clapped his spoon on the rim like a drum. Now it is a story, he said, serving into metal trays. Volunteers carried the trays to the shaded area. Children ate with bright eyes. Elders ate with slow pleasure. No one rushed them. At midday, Omar asked for 2 minutes of quiet, not for a speech, but for instructions. We will clean as we go, he said. Keep water moving. Use soft voices. If anyone looks lost, walk with them, do not point. He looked at Rian. Thank you for the crates. He looked at Danish. Thank you for the labels and the tape. He looked at Sammy. Thank you for your plan. It is working. Sammy straightened, his badge catching a small piece of light. A mother came to the welcome desk with a concern. Her daughter was shy and did not want to join the reading corner. Maya led the girl gently to a shelf and let her choose a book by touching the cover. The girl chose a story about a kite. Maya read the first page in a quiet voice. Soon the girl took the book and read the next page herself. The reading corner grew into a circle. A cousin who loved stories volunteered to come every Saturday. She wrote her name on Sammy's list, then stuck the list to the wall with the same tape Danish had rescued in the morning. The afternoon slipped by full of simple tasks that felt like gifts. Someone fixed a loose shelf. Someone repaired a school bag's zipper. Someone taught a child to tie laces. Aisha laughed with a grandmother who showed a photo of her grandsons. Bilal explained to a father why a charging port needed gentle hands. The older maid cut the flat bread with smooth strokes and sent extra pieces to the reading corner, where crumbs fell like happy snow. Before evening, the scholarship letters were handed to Aisha and Bilal again in front of their families. There was no microphone. Only many hands clapping softly and a few tears that nobody hid. The elders gave blessings that felt like warm shawls placed across shoulders. Aunt, who had once used her list like a shield, now used it like a bridge. She checked if anyone had been missed, then sat among the elders on a welcome chair and listened. When it was time to clean, the volunteers lined up without being told. The floor shone. The tables returned to their places. The boxes folded and stacked. The last pot was washed and left upside down to dry. The notice board was wiped and left with a fresh message in Maya's careful writing, "Thank you for serving. See you next month." Outside the center, the sky cleared. The evening light fell soft on the road. People said goodbye with the kind of tired joy that comes from useful work. Rian lifted the last crate into the van and wiped his brow with the back of his arm. "Today was better than any show," he said to Danish. "My hands feel clean." Danish nodded. "My head feels clean," he replied, and they both laughed. Sammy walked up to Maya and Omar with a small envelope. Inside was a simple card he had made on a computer at the center, "To the kind ones who made the night calm." Underneath, the staff had signed their names. Omar placed the card in his pocket as if it were made of glass. "We will keep this," he said. "It will remind us to stay steady." Maya told Sammy, "Next month, you will train 2 new volunteers. Teach them what you learned today." Sammy said he would, and his voice carried a new strength. In the weeks that followed, the changes did not disappear. They settled into daily life like sugar that melts into warm tea and makes the whole cup sweet. At Aunt's next family gathering, there was no highest earnings game. There was a quiet round where each person shared one small act of help they had done or planned. Rian spoke about delivering bread to the community center on Fridays. Danish talked about mentoring 2 students in basic computer skills at Bilal's table. The chairs at the front had no labels with names anymore. They had cards that said elders, helpers, and yes, still, welcome. Aisha started her Sunday hours at the clinic and sent messages to elders reminding them about medicine times. She visited the community center after shifts to check blood pressure for anyone who asked. Bilal set up a tiny corner workshop with a sign that promised patience, not speed. He charged little and sometimes nothing at all. He kept a jar on his table labeled "Next Student's Screen." The jar filled slowly, then faster, with coins and small notes. Children who once stood outside the door now came in to watch and learn. Sammy finished his training and became a junior supervisor. He learned to speak to new staff with the same calm Maya had used with him on the first night. Before each big event, he checked the lights, the cake table, the fan, and the cooling pipe. He kept a small box under the counter with a lighter that worked, spare napkins, and one polite note he would place somewhere helpful. He called it his quiet kit. As for Maya and Omar, they did what they had always done. They lived simply. They gave quietly. They made lists with soft pencils. They visited the community center each month and brought whatever was needed, cumin, a fuse, string, labels, or just time. They never stood in the middle of the room unless someone asked them to. They stood where they were most useful. Sometimes that was the kitchen. Sometimes it was the door. Sometimes it was a seat beside an elder who wanted a listener more than a speech. One evening, Aunt came to their home with a small box wrapped in brown paper and tied with a white ribbon, the same simple style Maya used. I found your old gift on my hall table after the party, Aunt said. I opened it the next morning and cried. I wanted to return the kindness. Maya untied the ribbon. Inside was a framed photo from the community day, elders on chairs that said welcome, children holding book kits, and, in the corner, Maya and Omar pouring tea. There were no names. Only a date and 4 words written on the back in Aunt's hand, "Thank you for family." Maya placed the frame on the shelf near the earlier photo she had given Aunt. Side by side, the 2 pictures made a small line of light in their simple living room. Omar set the kettle on the stove. The water boiled. He poured tea into 2 cups and handed one to Maya. They stood by the window, looking at the sky over the lane. It was the same sky as always. It felt larger now, not because anything had changed above, but because hearts had opened below. They did not talk about money. They did not talk about titles. They spoke about the next community day. Maya said, "We should add a corner for old toys. We can clean them and give them to younger children." Omar said, "We can repair handles on school bags. I will bring extra needles and thread." They smiled, the kind of smile that does not need teeth to be true. Night deepened. Somewhere in the lane a child practiced reading. Somewhere an elder counted medicine with Aisha's note in hand. Somewhere Bilal closed his jar for the day and wrote a receipt that said "paid with hope." Somewhere Sammy checked a lighter and placed it back in the quiet kit. And in many homes, people who had once clapped loud for numbers now clapped softly for plans. The lesson from the party stayed with everyone who had been there. It did not live in a speech. It lived in a habit. It sat at the front with the elders and the helpers and the word welcome. It walked with Rian when he carried bread. It walked with Danish when he taught a shy boy to open a file and save it without fear. It walked with Aunt when she set extra chairs and looked for faces that were easy to miss. It walked with Maya and Omar every day, light as a breath, strong as a promise. And so the story did not end with a grand scene. It ended like a good evening ends, with warm tea, a clean kitchen, a plan for tomorrow, and a quiet heart. Maya closed the window. Omar turned off the light. The house rested. The street rested. The city rested. In that rest, the seeds of the next kind day waited, ready to grow when morning came.